us, including the elders that came before them that taught us the truth. Shalom and salutations to all the brothers that push the word of truth and its sincerity. The hopeful and salutations to you. 20 how many now is conducting a war in Eastern Europe. Okay. Slovakia, NATO, and the EU. All right. So Slovakia about that. United Nations. Expert deems U.S. drone strike on Iran's Soleimani. See this? Iran's Soleimani, an unlawful killing. See the date? Who remembers this? Drone. DJ Trump droned Soleimani in 2020 as an act of asymmetric warfare. He was hanging out in Iraq, and they droned him, letting you know that there's a war going on. Okay? U.S., Iran. They killed one of the top generals. All right? Geneva, Reuters. The January U.S. drone strike in Iraq that killed top Iranian general Qasem Soleimani and 9 other people represented a violation of international law, a UN human rights investigator said on Monday. The United States has failed to provide sufficient evidence of an ongoing or imminent attack against its interest to justify the strike on Soleimani's convoy as it left Baghdad airport, said Agnes Callamard, UN Special Reporter on extrajudicial, summary, or arbitrary execution. The attack violated the UN Charter, Callamard wrote in a report calling for accountability for targeted killings by armed drones and for greater regulation of the weapons. Okay, now, this is old news, but there's a point going on. Now, who did, what's this guy's name that they just killed over, it was the Al-Qaeda, what was his name? Zawahiri, right? So this is a drone. They droned this guy. How about Ayman al-Zawahiri? All right, so this is one. Remember Soleimani. Soleimani goes back to Iran, yeah? Who did that? DJ Trump did that. Let's quickly get Ayman. Ayman al-Zawahiri. Where's he at? Zawahiri. What happened? August 2nd, 2022. What does it say? This was last month. U.S. kills Al-Qaeda. And they killed him, what, how many years ago? 10? They really killed him 10 years ago, if you go back and check the record. But anyway, for the sake of the lesson, U.S. kills Al-Qaeda in what? Drone strike in Afghanistan. You see what? You could just drone anybody you want whenever you want to. Whole different guy. That ain't DJ Trump. All right, this goes back when this guy was vice president under Monkey Boy. They were dealing with this guy when they killed him the first time. All right. The U.S. killed Al-Qaeda leader Ayman al-Zawahiri in a drone strike. President Joe Biden said, Brandon said Monday in a speech from the White House. I authorized a precision strike that would remove him from the what? This is war talk. This is asymmetrical. Are we in Afghanistan? I thought we left Afghanistan. Did we not? And they're droning whoever the hell they want to. You see what's going on? So these people, the Iranians, the Afghanis, they're not supposed to understand that they're still at war. Not what I want. It's not what I want. Slocky, bear with me. Huh. CIA, what? Bear with me. I had something totally different. Well, maybe I didn't get it. Oh, this is crazy. Okay, this is where I'm going right here. Let's watch this. This is Steckle Neck. All right. Slucky, bear with me. Oh, this happens. Right,
generous so child sponsors and hard.
The Watchman with Eric Steckelneck. Right, August 15th, which was yesterday. Israeli airstrikes hit what? Iranian targets near Russia base. Message to Moscow. Watchman newscast. Okay, and before we watch this, let's get, what did I want to get? I wanted to look something up. Oh, proxy. Let's get that real quick. Yeah. Let's get proxy war. Your definition of proxy war real quick. Okay. Let's get proxy war in Syria. All right. I guess we should get proxy war first. So it says foreign involvement in the Syrian civil war. So let's start with a civil war in Syria. All right. So if Syria is having a civil war, that's Syrians fighting against Syrians, right? Foreign involvement in the Syrian civil war refers to political, military, and operational support to parties involved in the ongoing conflict in Syria. All right? Now, you know what? Let's just get proxy. Proxy war. Proxy war. A proxy war is an armed conflict between two states or non-state actors, one or both of which act at the instigation or on behalf of other parties. Let's go there. All right. For example, Syria is fighting a civil war, but then the United States comes on one side of the civil war, and then Iran funds the rebels, if you will. A proxy war is an armed conflict between two states or non-state actors, one or both of which act at the instigation or on behalf of other parties that are not directly involved in the hostilities. In order for a conflict to be considered a proxy war, there must be a direct long-term relationship between external actors and the belligerents involved. The aforementioned relationship usually takes the form of funding, military training, arms, or other forms of material assistance which assist a belligerent party in sustaining its war effort. For example, the Russians are fighting against NATO and the EU And the proxy is the Ukrainians. In other words, NATO and the EU are giving the Ukrainians, okay, when I say NATO and the EU, especially Babylon the Great, which is America, are given money, arms, intelligence, ammunition, are fully propping up the Ukrainians. They're fighting the war through Ukraine. That's what proxy is. Okay? Now back to Steckleneck here. All right? So, this says Israel airstrikes hit Iranian targets near Russian base. All of this is taking place in Syria. So you got Israel fighting against Iran in Syria. You got Israel fighting against Russia in Syria. Okay? So it's really the Israelis against the Russians and the Iranians in somebody else's land. Okay? So that's a proxy. This goes into war. So really, Israel is at war. Shouldn't Israel be fighting Hezbollah? Right? Or one of those factions that are right next to them? No, they're fighting against Iran is their real target. Okay? Russia is in Syria. The United States is in Syria. Okay? Turkey is in Syria. They're all fighting over there. Really, that's the Battle of Armageddon about to spiral out of control. So let's watch this. Now, they're also going to mention, okay, Salman Rushdie, who I believe is an Elamite, but they took him out right here in New York. All right, so let's watch this and we'll break it down.
Hey folks, Eric Stakelbeck here. Welcome to the Watchman Newscast. I am not in the familiar confines of the Watchman studio today. I am in Southern California at TBN's Tustin studio. We've got some filming here, some meetings, some good things happening. In the meantime, some things were happening in the Middle East over the weekend. No surprise, the world's most volatile and strategic region. What happens in the Middle East does not stay in the Middle East. That's why we do what we do here in the newscast. Be sure to subscribe and click the notification bell so you get alerts every time a new video is posted. Let's get into it. Israeli airstrikes in Syria once again, but with an interesting wrinkle, a Russia angle this time.
Okay, so it didn't say Israeli airstrikes in Iran. It said in Syria. Okay, so Iran must be in Syria. Listen again.
Every time a new video is posted. Let's get into it. Israeli airstrikes in Syria once again, but with an interesting wrinkle, a Russia angle this time. First of all, the facts. Overnight Sunday night, Israel carried out airstrikes in the Syrian port city of Tartus. Now, Iranian weapons depots there were reportedly targeted, and then Israeli fighter jets also carried out strikes near the Syrian capital of Damascus against Hezbollah targets. In and of itself, this is not really a rare occurrence, folks. As you know, if you watch the newscast on a regular basis, Israel has carried out hundreds, perhaps even thousands at this point, of airstrikes in Syria over the past few years, targeting Iran, Hezbollah, and their various jihadi allies in that country. What is slightly different about this strike is that it took place in Tartus, a Syrian coastal city, literally under the noses of Russian forces. What do I mean? Well, Russia's only Mediterranean naval base is located in, you guessed it, Tartus. So those Israeli strikes against Iranian assets there came very close to Russian forces in Syria, and that's important because As we've outlined here in the newscast over the past few weeks, Russia and Israel, their relationship has been steadily unraveling on many fronts.
What is Russia doing in Syria? What is the United States doing in Iraq? Shooting up Iranians. All right, watch this thing spiral out of control.
Among them, over Israel's activities in Syria. Russia has been more and more vocal in the diplomatic realm in condemning Israeli airstrikes in Syria. And folks, this is really no surprise. Russia is aligned in Syria with Israel's greatest enemies. Whether it's the Iranian regime, the Assad regime in Syria, Hezbollah, Vladimir Putin's soldiers are shoulder to shoulder with sworn enemies of the Jewish state. You know, you can tell a lot about a man by the company he keeps, and Vladimir Putin's company includes, again, the world's #1 state sponsor of terrorism, the
United.
Thinking about going solar, but not
the United Snake.
Iranian regime. And Iran is becoming impatient with Russia, you would think, and they're saying, hey, we're supposed to be friends, and yet you are allowing the Zionist entity to continue to strike us here in Syria right under your noses. When are you going to do something, Vladimir? When are you going to step up and have our backs and tell the Zionist entity no more? And folks, that's a concern. The concern is that Russia eventually, and Russia essentially controls the airspace over Syria right now. The concern is that Russia eventually will say to Israel, you're done. We will no longer allow you to operate freely here in Syria.
Boom. Hooks in their jaws. That day is coming real quick here. They're setting up for it. Okay. Everybody's they're aligning or allying themselves with who they're going to go to war with in World War III.
And that will be a very slippery slope because Israel must retain that freedom of movement in Syria. Why? 2 reasons. Number one, the Iranian regime is attempting to establish a foothold, a beachhead on Israel's northern border from which it can launch attacks against the Jewish state. This is clear. Number 2, of course, Iran is attempting also to transit those precision-guided missiles, PGMs for short, through Syria into the hands of Hezbollah. Those precision-guided missiles do exactly what their name says. They are designed to hit the target with greater precision, greater accuracy. This is a red line that Israel cannot allow Iran and Hezbollah to cross. So those preemptive airstrikes, Israeli strikes in Syria, are absolutely essential to the defense of the nation of Israel. So we see Israel and Russia on a collision course over what's happening in Syria right now and on a number of other fronts as well, as we again have detailed here on the newscast. Hey, Vladimir Putin, he visited Iran last month, just about 3 weeks ago. Literally, the red carpet was rolled out for him when he arrived in Tehran, and he met with Iranian Supreme Leader Ayatollah Khamenei, Iran's President Ibrahim Raisi, and they weren't talking about the weather, needless to say. And you have to think that Iran was pressing Putin on Israel and Israel's continued strikes against Iranian assets in Syria. The plot thickens, but hey, Israel, with these strikes last night, again, in Tartus, Israel, I believe, was sending a bit of a message to Moscow and saying, hey, we know you're not happy about this, but guess what? We're going to continue to defend the Jewish state by any means necessary, and a big part of our defense strategy is weakening Iran in Syria, and whether that's under the noses of Russian troops, too bad. The defense of Israel is first and foremost on our agenda. Stay tuned. Speaking of the Iranian regime and its nefarious activities around the world, before we go, we're talking Middle East and obviously Iran marching across the region. But what about the United States, where I'm standing right now in our backyard? We've reported here in the newscast how Iran has been plotting to assassinate former U.S. officials on U.S. soil.
That's deep because Soleimani was killed in Iraq. So they're taking it a step up.
The list includes former Secretary of State Mike Pompeo, former National Security Advisor John Bolton, Iran openly trying to hire hitmen, Iran's Revolutionary Guards Corps in specific, trying to hire hitmen on American soil in D.C. and in Maryland to assassinate former U.S. officials. This is a dangerous escalation, folks, and it became more dangerous last Friday. The author Salman Rushdie, famous best-selling author, but most famous, sadly, for an incident in 1989. He wrote the book The Satanic Verses, and Ayatollah Khomeini issued a fatwa, a religious ruling, calling for Rushdie's death for blaspheming, in his words, Islam. Well, some 33 years went by. Rushdie was in hiding for much of that time. He's been living openly over the past several years. He was giving a speech in New York last Friday when he was attacked by a sympathizer, an Iranian regime Hezbollah sympathizer. A 24-year-old man rushed the stage, stabbed Rushdie multiple times. He is still in the hospital. It looks like he's going to live. He's going to be okay. But, folks, a very serious incident. Iran right away has denied any involvement. Surprise, surprise. And yet, there are reports that the stabber, the assailant of Salman Rushdie, was communicating with Iran's Revolutionary Guards Corps via social media. This may have been a guided attack, directed from Iran.
Pretty stiff.
More details, I believe, will emerge about that in the coming days. But, folks, wrap your heads around this. On American soil, and potentially an Iranian-guided assailant attempting to assassinate a famous best-selling author. This is, again, a dangerous, unprecedented escalation by the Iranian regime. And it comes, of course, amid continued nuclear talks between the Biden administration, Europe, and Iran. You would think after the Rushdie stabbing, just the latest complete provocation by Iran, you would think the Biden administration would kind of push away from the table, get up and leave and say, these negotiations are over, no more. They should have never begun in the first place, but now we're there. But plenty of information, obviously, evidence that Iran is attempting assassinations on U.S. soil. Let's cut the cord. You would think the White House would do that, but that's not happening. Joe Biden has made clear from the moment he took office that he is hell-bent on reforging, reestablishing that disastrous Iran nuclear deal.
All right, good enough. So what happened to Soleimani? All right. What happened to Zawahiri? See, those things don't matter. You could do whatever the hell you want abroad, but it can't come back here. All right. Amid nuclear talks, this is crazy. All right, so let's get a couple of presets. I'm just bringing you up to date. This is Monday. Things are just getting started. All right, so let's go to Ezekiel. Okay, here we have Russia. Ezekiel 38:2. Son of man, set thy face against Gog, the land of Magog, the chief prince of Meshech and Tubal, and prophesy against him. 4. And I will turn thee back. Turn who back? Russia, and put hooks on thy jaws. Turn you back to what? That old Soviet Union spirit. And I will bring thee forth in all thine army. See, God is like this. Remember when God, Yahweh Bashem Yahushai, he hardened Pharaoh's heart? Remember that? Pharaoh tried to go mano a mano with Yahweh, Bahashem Yahushai. And Pharaoh got scared for a minute, but the Most High hardened his heart. What is his heart? The heart is the Hebrew word lob, which means your mind. He controlled his mind, said, no, you're going to fight me anyway. So when I put you down, then everybody will know that I am Yahweh, right? I invented war. I created it through my son, all right? So right here, he's doing the same thing. And I will turn thee back. I will harden your heart. I will control your mind and put hooks into thy jaws and I'm going to make you stand up and fight, Vlad. And all thine army, horses and horsemen, all of them clothed with all sorts of armor, even a great company with bucklers and shields, all of them handling swords. Iran, see this word Persia? Iran, Ethiopia and Libya, with them. With who? With the Russians. Persia, with them. With who? With the Russians. The Iranians, with the Russians. All of them with shield and helmet. Gomer and all his bands, the house of Tagarma of the north quarters and all his bands, and many people with thee. All right. Hey, this is that great allied force that is about to handle business in World War III. Iran, Russia. All right. What's this? What's this guy talking? What's this? Iran, Russia, Gomer. Is this Gomer? Let me see. Let's see. Gomer, Turkey, Syria. Gomer, Turkey. Okay. Gomer, Turkey, and all his bands. Syria, Russia, Iran, Turkey, Syria. Libya is Libya. Ethiopia is Ethiopia. Okay. Who's this? It's locking up there. Who's this? Yeah. It's a lot. Persia, Gomer, and not Gomer Pyle. Magog. See it coming together right off the page? Okay? Jumping off the page, y'all. Here we are. Where'd that go? Ezekiel. Okay? Be thou prepared, and prepare for thyself, thou, and all thy company that are assembled unto thee, and be thou a guard unto them. Russia, be a guard unto Russia, guard Iran, guard Turkey, guard Syria. Ain't that what he's doing? All right, so with that, we'll end it right there. We hope that the elect will edify you, brothers and few sisters. With that, we're going to say shalom.